What is up, book nerds? I am Rachel Bateman, and I am super excited because today is October 1st, which means it is the first day of Preptober 2020. If you're not familiar with what Preptober is, that's what a lot of authors like to call the month of October as we prepare for National Novel Writing Month in November. I'm hosting a Preptober 2020 challenge on Instagram that I will link down below. I did this challenge last year as well, and it was so much fun getting to know new authors and newer writers and really seeing what they're working on. And so I decided I really just wanted to do it again this year. The challenge will give you ideas and prompts of what to post each day, and also there is an opportunity to win a NaNoWriMo survival kit from my business Second Star Boutique, so definitely check that out. For today's video, I wanted to jump right in and give you my top 5 tips for successful Preptober. And the first one is to plan what you're going to write. Now, I understand that a lot of you are pantsers and you really don't like outlining or pre-planning, and that's totally fine. That's not necessarily what I'm talking about here. I just feel like in order to have a successful NaNoWriMo, having an idea of what you want to jump into on November 1st is a good idea. So take some time during the month of October to brainstorm and to daydream and to just formulate story ideas in your head. So when November 1st comes and you sit down to write word 1, you know what kind of book you want to be working on. Now, if you're like me and you are a hardcore plotter, use this month to finalize your outline, to really hash things out and make sure that they all work and are ready to go on November 1st. I want to take a minute now to go through my Work Your Book plotting workbook. I wrote this last year ahead of NaNoWriMo and updated it again for this year. And I've had a few requests to do a bit of a walkthrough on it, so I'm going to do that really quickly. This is the Work Your Book plotting workbook. It comes in both this physical form with the hard laminated covers and in a pay what you want PDF form. It breaks down the different methods I use to plot my novel in exactly the way that I do it. So I first go through explaining things like story circles and the beat sheet from Save the Cat. And one of the lesser known screenwriting techniques that I really like, the nutshell technique by Jill Chamberlain. And I break those down and kind of explain them, and then I show how I use those methods along with other methods that I have devised of my own throughout the years to plot each of my books. It breaks it down step by step. After the explanation, it really goes through just like step by step how I work out my plots. This workbook is 130 pages long, but there's a lot of blank white space because if you're anything like me, you take notes all over the place. Like, I have a running OneNote file for my book and I email stuff to myself, and why I email stuff to myself when I have a OneNote file I can log into, who knows, but I do. And I write notebooks and sticky notes. My idea with this workbook is to leave enough blank space that I could put all the notes together in one spot. Now, it breaks it down step by step to really help guide someone through it. I wrote it with very beginning novelists in mind, people who just are overwhelmed by the idea of coming up with a full plot. But I've had a lot of feedback from seasoned storytellers that it's really helped them keep their pacing and plotting down pat. It also focuses on characters and building up believable characters and helping keep track of secondary character traits. Each character sheet in this workbook has its own story circle as well, because I feel like story circles work really, really well to break down individual characters to see how they're all moving throughout the plot of your novel. The most frequently asked question I get about this workbook is, do I actually use it? And the answer to that is yes. Every book that I write, the first thing I do is print off a workbook and put a mock cover on the front of it. This is my NaNoWriMo 2020 book that I'm working on right now. I put the mock cover on the front because it's fun, and then I start filling out my workbook. And I go through and make sure I have all the moving parts of the book and all the bits and pieces that I want. I've done this enough times that I don't always follow it step by step. If I have this great idea of something that's going to happen at the climax of my book, I'm not going to wait until I get to that point of the workbook to make notes on that, and neither should you if you're using a guide like this. I will jump forward and make notes and go back, but I make sure I touch on all the things in the workbook for every book that I write, and doing so makes it so much easier for me to pound out that first draft and get it done. I do want to reiterate that you do not have to be this hardcore of an outliner, and you do not have to follow my outlining workbook in order to be successful. That's absolutely not what I'm saying. But I will link the workbook down below, both the physical copy and the PDF version, in case you're interested. My number 2 tip for successful Preptober is to schedule your time. Schedule time during October to be working on your outline, or if you're not an outliner, schedule time to take a bath and think, or go for a drive and think. It may seem like wasted time, but brainstorming and daydreaming is a big part of the writing process. Make sure you schedule time to plan what you're going to be doing so it doesn't come to Halloween on October 31st and you're like, oh shoot, NaNoWriMo starts tomorrow and I have no idea what I want to do. Also, if you are someone who wants to do things like prepare freezer meals in advance of November, or deep clean your house so you don't have to worry about it in November, which by the way, kudos to you because my family would probably like if I did that, but I never have. If you do things like that to prepare your non-writing life for the fact that you will be more busy in November, schedule the time in October to do that so you can make sure it is done and it is not a stress on you come November 1st. Also, schedule your November out. Schedule your writing times. If that means you're scheduling an hour in the morning and an hour in the evening, do that. If you're scheduling 3 hours on a Tuesday night and 3 hours on a Thursday night and 6 hours straight on a Saturday, do that. But get it on the schedule and get it ready to go because things always crop up. Life happens and schedules want to shift and change all the time. Now, certain things will come up that you will have to change your writing schedule, but it has been my experience that if you do not have writing scheduled, it is so much easier for other things to get in the way. So for something like trying to write an entire novel during a month, you really need to schedule your time out and then you need to protect that schedule as much as possible. I'm going to sit here now and wait for this helicopter to go overhead before it gets really, really loud. Okay, I'm pretty sure it's far enough away now that you'll be able to sufficiently hear everything I have to say again. So to finish off, tip number 2 about scheduling your time, the second part of that is to protect that schedule. Like I said, certain things come up and they are priorities and you're going to have to shift. But for the most part, if you've scheduled writing, protect that. Don't let others make you feel guilty for taking the time for writing, and don't let yourself feel guilty for taking the time for writing. Schedule your time out and protect that. Which leads directly into tip number 3, and that is to tell people you're taking part in NaNoWriMo. Tell people in October that you will be writing a book in November. What this does is when someone comes to you on November 7th and wants you to do something that's going to take away from your writing time, instead of trying to gracefully tell them no, which a lot of us I know struggle with, you can say, remember last month when I told you I'd be writing this month and so I'd be more busy? I'm sorry, but I can't. Especially if you have a hard time telling people no, it is really important that you set the expectation ahead of time that you will be extra busy in November. So tell people you're writing. It's also just really exciting to tell people that you're planning on writing a novel. People love to hear that. They get jazzed about it. And that does actually help when you get into the slogs of the end of week 2 of NaNoWriMo and you're really struggling with your writing, to remember the people who are cheering you on, these people you've told you're writing a novel and they're excited for you. So tell people. Tell people you're planning to write a novel next month. Tip number 4 for a successful Preptober is actually a tip for a successful NaNoWriMo, but it is something you need to be actively working at during October so you're at the right mindset come November 1st, and that tip is to lower your expectations. I'm not saying you should lower your expectations with your writing, though there is some value in that because when you are writing fast, sometimes it gets messy. What I mean is lower your expectations in the rest of your life. Lower your expectations about how clean your house is. If you are on a roll in your writing and you miss sweeping, that's okay. If normally you'd clean bathrooms on a Monday, but you had a really rough weekend and you need to make up your word count, 1 week's not going to kill your bathroom, even if you have a kid like my kid who is disgusting. It's okay. Lower your expectation. Lower your expectations about the kind of meals you're going to cook. If you have frozen pizza for dinner one night, it's going to be fine. If you throw chicken nuggets in the toaster oven 4 days in a row for lunch, your kids aren't going to die. Lower your expectations about the things you normally are doing, because when you're adding something like writing an entire novel on top of your normal obligations, that takes the time from those other obligations. That's just what is going to happen. So there is a metaphor that I really like to keep in my mind, and I cannot for the life of me right now think of where I first heard this. It's like right on the tip of my tongue, and I just can't get it. So if I think of who told me this, I will link it down below. And if you know where this metaphor originated, let me know in the comments and I will amend my caption to include credit. But what I like to keep in the back of my mind is the idea of juggling a lot of balls. We've all heard this before. You have all these different balls that you're juggling and all the things you have to do in your life, and you get so many on there that eventually you lose something and you drop the ball. This is where this phrase comes from. You drop the ball on something. Now, when we talk about all the balls we're juggling, we have glass balls that if you drop them, they're going to shatter and be ruined. And you have rubber balls that if you drop them, whoops, you dropped it. Now, I've heard a lot of people pervert this metaphor to say, you have your family, you have your kids, and these are your glass balls. And so your writing or whatever, if it drops, those are the rubber balls. And that is not what it means. What it means is, you have your family and kids, and there are some glass balls over here. They need fed and protected and shelter and to feel loved. But say your 9-year-old has a favorite Minecraft shirt that he wants to wear one day, and you forget to wash it the night before, and it's disgusting. That's a rubber ball. That is not a glass ball scenario, even though it has to do with your family. Say you planned a fancy meal and you started cooking it and then you got caught up in your writing and you burned it and you had to order takeout. Not a glass ball situation. People are fed, people are safe, people are happy, people are sheltered, people are loved. There are glass balls when it comes to our family, and there are rubber balls. Writing, same deal. There are glass balls and there are rubber balls. During NaNoWriMo, when you're trying to write a novel in a month, your actual writing is your glass ball. Everything else is a rubber ball. So if you had promo posts that you were going to put on Instagram or check-in posts with your word counts and you forgot, rubber ball situation. Even if it messes up the algorithm and even if your viewership goes down a little bit. You didn't have time to film and edit a YouTube video for November 14th? Rubber ball situation. Even if you've posted a video every week since you joined AuthorTube 3 years ago. There are glass balls and there are rubber balls. Now, everyone has to decide for themselves what their priorities are and what are glass balls and what are rubber balls. But my point is, lower your expectations. Don't expect everything that you want and plan to do in your life to be a glass ball situation. If you normally have a sparkling clean house, but you can't maintain that level of clean and still write a novel in a month, it's okay if it's a little less clean for the month of November. That's okay. If you don't have time to make really great lunches for your kids during the day because you're writing, kids love chicken nuggets, it's fine. Prioritize and lower the expectations about the other things you're doing so you can open up time to do the things you've committed to do in the month of November. Another part of that ties back into tip number 2 about scheduling your time, and that is to lower expectations about the amount of things you can do. And if that means you have to clear your schedule out some, that's totally fine. I volunteer with the youth at my church, and every Wednesday night we have youth activities. During the month of November, I don't do Wednesday night activities. I make sure that there is someone else there to take care of them and make sure everything runs smoothly. Now, in 2020, it's a little different because everything's canceled anyway, so it should be a little easier to clear your schedule, but that's not the case for everyone. So part of lowering your expectations and scheduling for your writing is that maybe you're not able to do the amount of things during the month of November that you normally could do, and prioritize, lower your expectations about what you can do, and make sure you make the time for the things that you've committed to do. And finally, my 5th tip for successful Preptober, which is my weirdest tip, but also my favorite tip, is to get yourself a rubber duck. So, my husband is a software engineer. Just to preface this, we were driving to a small town about 100 miles north of here a few months ago to pick up this engine he bought. It doesn't really matter. We were in the car for a long time. And I was trying to work out this plot for the book that I thought I'd be writing this November until I changed my mind about 6 weeks ago. And I was stuck on this problem. So I'm like, I need to hash this out with you real quick. And I told him my problem and I threw out some ideas and he sat there and he thought. And he drove and he thought. And then I threw out some more ideas and he kept driving and thinking. And then I threw out some more ideas and he kept thinking. And then I said, but wait, so that thing I said earlier, what if we did this? And then I solved the problem. And he never said a word. See, I tend to think as I speak, and he tends to be very introspective and really, really think things out before he speaks. But what he said to me is, oh, so I'm like your rubber duck. And I'm like, okay, what? Well, he explained to me that in software engineering and programming, there's a term called rubber ducking. And the idea is that you have a rubber duck and you place it up on the top of your monitor. This is for people who have like, back in the day when computer monitors were big, because let's be real, there's no rubber duck sitting on the top of that monitor. But you put it up there, and when you're stuck on a problem, you look at your little duck and you talk it out. And you talk until you figure it out. Because a lot of times when it comes to a problem that you're trying to figure out, talking it out is what you need. You don't necessarily need the advice of another person or for them to figure it out for you. You just need the act of vocalizing it and talking it out. So in the programming world, they talk about rubber ducking. I had a problem and I had to rubber duck it. I had to just talk it out to myself. People around here probably think that I'm like the resident loony for the amount of time that I spend just driving the back roads and talking out loud to myself in an empty car. But there is a lot of times when that's what is needed to work through a plot problem. So for Preptober, get yourself a rubber duck. And when you're stuck trying to plot your book, talk it out with your duck. When you're writing in November and you come to a roadblock and you don't know what to do, talk it out with your duck. Get a rubber duck. Okay, those are my top 5 tips to having a successful Preptober leading into a successful NaNoWriMo next month. If you like this video, give me a thumbs up. Go ahead and subscribe if you haven't already. And when you do so, hit that bell so you can be notified of all my future videos. I am Rachel Bateman and I will be back here next week to check in after the first week of Preptober.